is here. Good morning, everyone. Are you excited for lunch? I'm the one getting in the way, right? So I hate these time slots. Usually before lunch and after lunch, I hate those time slots. But here we are. Right? Thank you for coming. My name is Kulas Angeles. I am a director for software quality engineering. I'm a quality advocate and a transformation agent. I've been in the quality business for about 18 years now. I shifted to DevOps for about 2 years and came back into quality engineering. I'm also a professional certified coach by the International Coaching Federation. I'm a musician. I'm a doctorate student. It's not that I love studying. It's just that my company is paying for it. That's why I'm a student right now. I'm a husband and a father of three adorable kids. I'm a Jesus follower and a preacher in training. So if my talk sounds a bit preachy, it's because of the training. Okay? And don't tell my boss this, I'm lazy, so I always think of ways on how to automate stuff for personal and professional use. Okay. One thing I didn't add in here, I'm a self-proclaimed introvert. So if you bump into me in this conference and I'm not looking at you, it's probably my social battery has already been drained. Okay, it's not you, it's me. All right. So, but I will talk to you if you talk to me. All right. Okay. So the title of my talk. The title of my talk is Keeping Humans in the Loop, right? AI-assisted 3DDs, and you might not have heard about 3DDs yet, right? I'll explain that later. A new way test-first approach. So it's not a new test-first approach, it's a new way of doing things, all right? So I'm coming from a pain point wherein, isn't it hard to deliver faster without sacrificing quality? You'll always hear from your executives, deliver faster, faster, faster. But most of the time, right, quality suffers, right? Because quality software needs time from planning to delivery. Do you agree? Yes. Okay, I see a lot of nodding. So the problem, what I think the problem is with speed meeting quality really is not the people, not the process, not the methodology, nor the tools, right? But rather a race against time, right? You want to be first. You want to be the pioneers. You want to fix issues as soon as possible. So the solution that we came up with, right, because we've always had that pressure as well, is what I'm going to talk about today, right? How we were able to deliver a bit faster with quality built in using AI assistance. And now you might be wondering what 3DD means. So when I was conceptualizing this idea and presenting it to our executives, right, I always do acceptance test driven development, behavior driven development, and test driven development in one breath, which is so hard to do. So my colleague struggled seeing me, doing that in one breath, and it's becoming a tongue twister, right? So she said, why don't you just use 3DDs? Right, which is really the combination of these three, right? All of the driven development. Okay, so 3DDs really is your ATDD, your BDD, and your TDD. Before I proceed, who here is a developer? Okay, so I will not do developer jokes. Okay, we have developers in the room. All right. I'm gonna put it away. All right. Okay.
Sebastian is human.
I was hoping all of us would be tested, right? Okay. So I would just like to emphasize that a few keywords here, right? We are using AI assistants, right? It's not agentic because we believe that we have to keep the humans in the loop, right? So that they can triple, double, quadruple check, right, the output and use their experience and expertise to make the results better. Okay, so this is not agentic at all. We still have to use our expertise. Okay. So a story from 5 years ago. So we tried doing 3DDs manually before, right? 5 years ago, and although we were successful with the PDD part, we struggled with ATDD much more with the TDD, right? Because more than the methodology, skill, and toolset shift, the test first approaches, the three test first approaches that we are talking about today, requires more of a culture and mindset shift, which as a previous DevOps coach and now leading a team of quality coaches is a very tall order, right? Whenever you have to shift the mindset, whenever you have to shift the company, the culture, it's always hard. So one of the most compelling reasons why we failed back then, right? So we failed 5 years ago, is that people in our company were not so fond of changes. Are people in your company fond of changes?
No.
No, right? Right. So we can all relate. And we can blame them as they have to balance delivering something while also trying to learn something new and implementing that new ways of working, whether it's a tool, whether it's a process, right? At the end of the day, delivery takes precedence. Do you agree? Yeah. So then comes generative AI. So I'm a bit impatient writing test cases, writing test plans, and automated scripts because I'm a slow typer. Okay, so my ideas are faster than my fingers most of the time. And good thing our company, about a year ago, created our own version of ChatGPT. So all of the knowledge that tool has is within the company, doesn't go out. So I was thinking, what if AI can write the skeleton for me, and I'll just supply the logic or the meat of it, right? That's where this new way of working started. So today we will be talking about very high definitions of ATDD, BDD, and TDD. Right? This is not a session on how you will learn this. So I'll give an overview. We'll also look at how we were doing things and how we are planning to do things. And then a bit of a case study with two teams that we tried this on, and what did we learn with those two teams. And then if we have time, I'll do a quick demo. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So this is a busy slide, right? But I'll try to go through it really, really fast and slow at the same time. Right? So acceptance test driven development, or ATVD, is relying mostly on acceptance criteria and tests because it is the prerequisite, right? So remember, this is a test first approach. So you technically write test first before doing anything else, right? So for acceptance test driven, you are being required to write acceptance criteria. Also, it has to use non-technical language. Can be Gherkin, but it can be your checklist. And the main purpose is that it clarifies the requirements and definitions of front, right at the beginning. All right. And at the end of the day, it increases collaboration. The more you communicate, right, the more you collaborate. Okay. So there are two ways to write an acceptance criteria. One is there are more ways, but I'm focusing on two. Right. The two ways that we are using for this approach is rule-based acceptance criteria, or your usual checklist. You should have this, color of this, right? You should not have this. And then you have the scenario based, or your given when then, the GWT, which is more opinionated, right? So that's ATDD. Now TDD, if you can see it, that's test driven development, right? It's a programming practice, right? So for our developers here, have you done TDD? Yeah. Okay. So it's a programming practice focuses on writing tests first, or your unit test, you may call it that, before writing an actual functioning code, right? Most of the time they use the red-green refactor, wherein they write the test first. Obviously, it will fail because it doesn't have any implementation. And then you make it pass, like minimum coding required to make it pass, and then you refactor, ensuring that it still passes. Refactor really is improving the flow, improving the performance of the code, right? And you do it over and over again until you're able to develop the feature that you're working on. Okay, so that's what TDD is. And then finally, behavior-driven development, or BDD, is derived and extends both TDD and ATDD. So it uses Gherkin language most of the time, right? But you can deviate from GWT, right? So this approach is scenario and behavior specific, focusing describing the expected behavior of the system. So same with ATDD, it improves collaboration because this doesn't use technical jargons or even code for you to be able to create your test using BTD. So most of the time, this is attributed to testers, but developers definitely can use this as well, depending on how they want to approach their testing. And now you might notice that ATDD and BDD are almost the same because BDD, again, is a subset of ATDD. So when we do ATDD in the 3DD's implementation, we use scenario based. So when we talk to our users or our trainees on what to use, we also almost always say, if you can use scenario based acceptance criteria, which is your given when then, that will flow naturally towards your BDD. But in the learnings later, I will show you that it just doesn't work for our POs and our BAs. Okay. All right. So, any questions on the ATDD, BDD, EDD? Very high level. Okay. If there's none, this is how we were doing it before and how we are proposing to do it now. So, prom is really your POs and your BAs create a user story, right? And then the developer starts developing it, and then the QE starts testing it, and then you demo. If everyone is happy, right, we release the feature, and then we go back to writing user story, development, and testing. Mind you, though, that development and testing can start at the same time. It's not necessarily a sequential flow. They can do things at the same time, right? But it's this simple, really, if you look at it. Now, what we are proposing really for the new flow is that the POs and the BAs can still write the user story, but we include the writing of the acceptance criteria, right? So we inserted the acceptance criteria, and this is a joint activity. POs can definitely write the skeleton or the initial acceptance criteria, and then the PO and the dev and QE will join in and collaborate so that they know what they are working on, right? So that's the importance of acceptance criteria. It's your source of truth. Anything that deviates from it is wrong, supposedly, right? Then after you have your acceptance criteria, your developers will write their code, right? And then your testers can write the acceptance test, right? We are doing it in a way. This one doesn't work. We are doing it in a way that it's piecemeal, right? So piecemeal meaning you don't have to implement everything. You can do it one by one, right? Or you can do it all at the same time. But that's why we have an option here, right? That if you want to still continue writing your tests in your own way, right, then so be it. Or you have an option to do BDD, right? Same thing with the developers. You can write your unit tests or write your codes in your own way or your processes, or you can use PDD, right? And then the cycle goes on until the feature is the acceptance criteria is satisfied, and then you do a demo. If everyone's happy, you release, you go back to user story. Now you might be noticing these icons in here. So that's where we use AI assistance, right? We use AI assistance when creating acceptance criteria. We use AI assistance generating our feature files, our step definitions for BDD, but not the entirety of it. Again, not agentic. And then TDD to write our unit tests, and we can even push it to write the implementation. Okay. And then our expected outcomes is that we can be faster. There can be faster time to market. There's technology acceleration by using, AI. And then development preparation is now better just because you are now talking to the forefront. And then quality will do better just because you're writing tests first before you actually write anything else. Okay. So these are the case studies that we've had with two teams that we worked with. So one is a web project. So what happened with that web project is that they don't have any quality engineers during that time. So we were just able to focus on ATDD and DDD. Okay. But the team achieved at least 90% code coverage for two applications that they are working on. The average in our company is 15%, right? But don't quote me on that. All right. It's 15%. And then they reported boost in productivity by 20% after using Copilot and Copilot chat in writing unit tests and their implementation. So this is based on the interview that we've had with the developers. Now, on the other hand, the mobile project is a bit harder, right? Just because not all technology right now supports AI, right? So we did use ATDD, TDD, and BDD with them, right? So the only thing that we were successful with was the ATDD, right? So far. So because right now they are just really getting familiar on how to write good acceptance criteria and good requirements in a way, right? So our next step for them is really for them to leverage it in TDD and BDD. And that actually for this mobile project, that's where all of the learnings that we've had came from. Okay, so what did we learn? Right, so we started with this initiative around November last year. Right, and these are four of the few things that we've learned with the group. And the first one is that our POs and BAs like rule-based more than scenario-based. They kept on saying, given when there is just so long, right? I can't understand it. It takes me more time for me to review the output rather than rather than making it a checklist. Like being straightforward, saying, I want to have this, I want to have that, none of this, right? So what we are finding is that they want rule-based over scenario-based. Remember the reason why we are proposing scenario-based is so that it can flow to BDT, right? But our POs and BAs really wanted to stick with checklist items, right? This is my requirements. This is my acceptance criteria, right? So do something about that, right? All right. Okay. So that was the first learning. The second one is, remember my story about teams mandate to deliver fast, but most of the time they sacrifice quality. This learning is related to that. This new way of working entails them to learn the concepts as well as learn the tools, which can be disruptive to delivery, right? Just like any transformation and change, there's a J curve. Have you heard about the J curve? Wherein performance will suffer for a while and then go exponential. That's what we are targeting for this one, meaning we want them to be exponential after a certain point in time where in performance dip, right? But what we've learned is that all of this will take time, right? We did this with them. So the initial one, the mobile team that I was talking about, we did this with them in 3 weeks, right? So we started with an overview. I'll show you our training timeline later. We started with an overview, and then we proceeded with the ATDD working sessions, and then BDD and TDD in 3 weeks. And then, and then after 3 months, we were catching up with them. What happened? We didn't do anything, right? Because we have to deliver something, right? That's always the case. So what we did later, as I show you that the training timeline that we have, is we tried to break it down, let it marinate, right? For the new ways of working, we let it marinate for a few sprints and then proceeded with a new one. Okay. So the third bullet is technology limitations. Same thing with the mobile team. So our company has a couple of tools for automation, right? The main ones are Tosca, Ready API, and Cucumber for web and mobile in Java. Copilot Chat was very useful as an IDE plugin for Cucumber, but not so much for your Tosca, your Ready API, right? As they are their own application and framework. For sure, we can do workarounds, we can make it work, right? But sometimes it's just longer to make it work than to actually just code it manually. Right? So that's the first challenge for BDD. Most of our testers use Tosca and Ready API. So if we ask them to generate a feature file for Tosca, it just doesn't work. Right? So that's the first limitation. For TDD, there was also a limitation for Xcode. So they were using Xcode to generate our iOS application. And back then, when we were trying it out, their IDE doesn't support Copilot Chat yet. So there goes the technology support again. And then the final limitation or lesson that we learned is more on pride can get in the way, right? I've seen this over and over again in our company. Not sure if you've seen this in yours. There's always a big sigh when we talk about AI. Hey, we are using AI, and they will say, AI again, right? So here's what I have observed. Again, my observation as a professional coach. Right? Developers, BAs, and POs who work hard to get where they are using their skills and experience sometimes have the tendency to reject AI in whatever shape or form. That is controversial, and I know it is. So please hear me out. And most of the time, it's because of pride. Okay, you will usually hear these phrases. Why will I delegate my work to AI? I can generate better output than your robot. And then it will take some time. It will take me more time understanding the output than if I do it myself. Have you heard those phrases? Whenever you try to push AI, right? So the biggest thing about this is they will make that remark even without trying. Right? They haven't tried it, they will just say, no, I won't do it. So as a coach, I always encourage my clients to give opportunities a shot because you'll never know unless you try and be immersed on something. Right? That's the same thing we ask our trainees for 3DDs. We tell them it's not a bulletproof solution. It has pros and cons and may not work for you. Right? But unless you try, you'll never really know. Right? So most of the time, again, pride can get in the way. Okay. So this is how our training timeline looks like now. So back then, as I was saying, we did it in 3 days. Now we are looking at about 4 to 8 sprints, right? Which could be about 4 to 6 months. terms of training. So we start with overview, not with the team, but with their leaders. We want the leaders to understand what we are doing, right? Again, we tell them it's not a bulletproof solution. And if you're interested, we can go to the team and do the training with them, right? We start with leaders and then we go to all members of the squad, right? As an overview. So everyone understands what we are trying to do. And then we do ATDD first. Okay? We want them to be solid in writing their acceptance criteria. And and then we do a working session. It's not a training. Okay, we do a working session. We take a story from them and we help them craft their acceptance criteria using the tools. Okay, and then that will be now discussed with the whole team. Okay, as a collaboration activity. So what we'll do is after that overview and working session, we leave them on their own. We let it marinate for 2 to 4 sprints, while also collaborating with them. Hey, what's happening? Were you able to use the tool? Were there any problems with the approach, right? And then we do once they are good and solid with the ATTD approach, we do TDD and BDD, right? With mostly with the developers first, and then BDD with the quality engineers, right? So that's a separate session, but we try to do it within the same week, right? And then same thing, we leave them on their own, but we still continually monitoring them. And then after 2 to 4 sprints, we come back and see if there is anything to troubleshoot, right? I forgot to mention that in any of this, we always start with baseline metrics, right? How are you doing right now? What's your cycle time? How many bugs are you producing right now? Right? How often are you releasing? And then after we have implemented this, we take the new metrics, hoping that it will be faster, there will be fewer defect leakage in production. Okay. All right. Any questions before I do the demo? Just very quickly, the demo will be very quick. Okay. Okay. Let me share. So the demo that I will be showing to you, since I cannot really show you our own, chat GPT, right? We call it Sun Life Ask. Um, I'll be using the real chat GPT, right? And then we'll be using Copilot Chat GPT for acceptance criteria, and then Copilot Chat for TDD and BDD. Okay?
Which version of ChatGPT did you use?
I'm just using the latest one.
Okay.
Whatever it's shown in.
That's
Right? Because I don't usually use ChatGPT at work. We cannot use it. Right? So outside, I'm using it. All right. So not at all a ChatGPT expert, right? But I've used Copilot Chat a lot in the development work and testing work that I have done. Right? So this is what we will be using as a user story. Again, for you to be able to generate acceptance criteria, there needs to be a solid story, right? So that's the basis of your acceptance criteria. If there's no story, there's no point generating acceptance criteria. Okay, so this is a very common story that we might have encountered if we are all testers, right, or developers. As a registered user, I want to reset my password using my email address so that I can regain access to my account if I forget it. Okay. Let me just first, I'll stop sharing and then share my browser. And I'll just copy the user story. Okay. And it's wrong screen. Probably have mirror. Hey, you can see chat. All right. All right. And then you can see it? No. Yeah. I have to share my screen. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so I copied the user story. So again, with any generative AI, context is key, right? We've heard it earlier, right? I also what Olivia said about know your need, right? Know your need. As for this activity, the need is really to deliver faster with quality built in, right? So we are looking for ways on how we can deliver faster with quality built in. And we figured probably this is one of them. Okay, so with ChatGPT, what we are intending to do is for it to help us generate the acceptance criteria that we have for the user story. So a very simple query that we do is generate rule, rule based acceptance criteria for this story. Okay, as a user, the email story, right? Very basic. So it will give me all of those checklist items, right? What's the eligibility rule? What's the email validation rule? Reset link, authentication rule, password policy. Again, as experts, we can do it ourselves, right? But see how it generated it in the fast manner. Now, not discounting that it might be wrong, right? So that's where you come in. That's where the human goes into the loop and check the output, right? This can be deleted, this can be, this can be modified, or this can just go as is, right? That's what our role is for anything that we generate through AI. All right. So you can even push it further by saying generate scenario based, not push it, but the other one, which is the scenario based acceptance criteria for, and then add a bit of context. Add edge cases, non-functional, and functional cases. Right? So it will tell you some functional scenarios or acceptance criteria. It is also using the GWT. That's why it's called scenario based. And then you can see here that there will be edge cases, which I asked it to do. And then you have non-functional scenarios. See how it helps me type faster? Right? So what I'll do now is I'll review it and then, weed out those that doesn't count really. All right. So it addresses my need to type faster, right? But it didn't address my need to think faster, right? Okay. So any questions on this one? So that's how we usually use it. We don't have a prompt template because every user story will be different. Every testing team has a different loop. And so we work it with them during the working sessions. All right. Now I will demo BDD first before I go to TDD. Okay, same thing, right? Generate BDD scenario for me using Cucumber. So I'm adding context, right? Cucumber, right? Feature file and the step definitions as well in Java. Okay, so it wrote the feature file. It wrote the feature file, it wrote the step definition for me. Again, typing is faster. This may compile or not compile, right? So that's where you again come in as a quality engineer and as an automation engineer to ensure that what's written here is correct, right? As you see here, it doesn't really have any logic yet. It's just a outputting that it's checking if user has this email. So that means you have to inject it with your code and your logic. All right. But again, skeleton is there, right? You can use it as is, or again without those that are not really valuable for you. Okay. And then finally for TDD, right? Generate unit tests using story, use EAA or arrange act cert, right? Which is really the same thing as GWT, right? For developers. Sorry. And then I'm gonna just say use JUnit 5 so that it uses the framework as well. Okay, so it generated.
We have a rank.
Did you just generate unit tests not from the acceptance criteria generated, but instead from that?
I'll go there in a while.
Huh?
Yeah, I'll go there in a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's a great observation. I was hoping to show this to you first and then show you the actual implementation. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So assuming you are generating it directly from the story, right? This is how it will look like. Right? Again, context is king, right? Or context is key for any generative AI. So without it knowing what the acceptance criteria, it will try to come up with its own acceptance criteria and the code for that one, right? But sorry, what's your name?
Ben.
Ben, what Ben is saying, we should be generating it based on the acceptance criteria that was generated. So that's what I will be showing late in a while. So what I'll do is I'll just copy a scenario that we have in here, right, that was generated. I'll assume that this scenario one is correct. All right. So I'll copy that and then do the same prompt. So now that it has a context for the acceptance criteria, it generated more than just saying this is the test for this one. So it now has an assert, it now has an arrange, and it now has the steps on how you can achieve those acceptance criteria. Okay, again, you can push it further by saying add edge cases, add the functional and non-functional, right? So those are some of the prompts that you might want to use when generating something for Copilot chat. And then what we push the developers to use this for after writing the test for. Remember, if they run this will fail, right? Because it doesn't have any implementation. You are writing the test first. So what we show developers is that hey, probably you can use Copilot Chat to write the implementation, right? So say using Spring. And it will generate sort of the working code for it, right? So that's how our developers, remember the 20% efficiency gain that they have, that's how they were using this. Okay. All right, that ends my demo. If you're interested to learn more, here are a few websites that I looked at for definition as well as for some topic about AI, generative versus agentic, and AI assisted, sorry. And that's my presentation. Thank you for listening, staying, and all right. Do we have any questions?
Open questions, remember, bring,
Ben.
Okay, so I thank you. I like this and this using AI to help generate tests is what I spent much of my last couple of years on. I have one big concern about this. The user stories came out as an alternative to these very detailed technical specifications. I used to work in a world where we might spend 6 months to a year writing specifications and then we'd start building, so this was kind of a response to that. But a story, as originally intended, was an invitation to a conversation. And then structures like the as I want, so that came about to help people be more value focused on what they're delivering and their thinking. But to me, the most important part of that is that conversation. And my fear with this is people use the AI to bypass that conversation, which enables them to build software that really delivers value. And when you show metrics of code coverage, that doesn't tell me anything about what value we're delivering, or are we solving the problem we intend to solve. So I guess I'm wondering, how do you deal with that balance? And like your example of, login function, if we're building something that we or everyone else have built a million other times, we've got the the 800 million, login capability, there's enough documentation, the models have been trained on that they can probably do pretty good, but if you do anything novel. And we bypass that thinking about it and that critical thinking to figure out how are we gonna build this, how are we gonna test it?
Yeah.
I fear there's danger in succumbing to the AI's magic and not doing thinking we need to do.
Yeah, I agree. So apart from doing all of this stuff, we are also transforming testers to quality engineers. And one thing that one of the leaders, actually a great leader, told me that I don't want them touching any AI stuff because we want them to be good in what they do first before they actually use AI, right? Because you're right, right? If AI just comes in as a band-aid solution for you to be faster without you knowing what the correct output is, then it's very dangerous, right? So I agree with you. So that's I think is a good balance between what's the skill set right now of those in the team, right? And how are they taking AI as part of their processes and their outputs so that they can again the main pain point is that you have to deliver faster with quality built in. Yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So let's go top, same thread.
First one.
Okay, so is there a step in your workflow where you have devs validate the acceptance criteria that are written by your quality people?
No,
Or who
yeah,
writes or by the product team?
yeah,
Is
it's a
that
collaboration.
really help that conversation going in the team that I worked in, once like getting the devs involved early and making sure there's this conversation and we all agree on the acceptance criteria, rather than one person writing them, be it manually or with help.
Yeah, that's actually the collaboration part in here. Right, you see, the POs might start writing the acceptance criteria, but the collaboration part is that everyone has to understand, has to contribute, right, and challenge the acceptance criteria. So that's where the magic really happens, the collaboration.
So you're not trying to replace that.
Sorry?
So you're not trying to replace that stuff.
Oh, no. We are not, right? I'm just trying to replace the typing right now as for my personal use.
You,
So I've been using Copilot for the last 3 months a lot. And one thing that I've realized is as you start touching a lot of files, it becomes too much of context drift. That it becomes tough to review code to just make sure it's right. So what do you suggest?
Are you a developer?
Was that?
Are you a developer?
No.
Okay,
testing.
so you use the actual code to generate your what?
Tests.
Your BDD? Or just plain?
Currently, I'm doing performance tests, but
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's actually true, right? Actually, there's also a limitation with IntelliJ wherein you cannot feed the whole project as a context, right? But what we've seen with VS Code is that you can feed the whole project as a context.
Yeah.
But you're right. There might be a drift and there might be hallucinations as well, right? Just because there's too much info, it's trying to connect with. So as a guide that we do, so we do have a framework for Cucumber. So what we do is we just add the context of the framework as well as the code that we are working on. So that it doesn't have too many information being fired at the AI at the same time. Most of the time it works though, right? Most of the time you have to tweak it and fix it. Right? So the most important thing again is you know what the output is, you understand what the output is, so that you can make sense of it and fix it if need be, or just totally discard it if it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I guess my larger question is, say I'm trying to fix a problem. I use AI, I use Copilot. At the end of the task, I get it working, but now I know AI has touched 50 files.
Mhm.
So now I'm gonna open up a PR which has 50 files in it, and it's a lot to review.
Hmm.
And how can you justify saying, okay, with all this work that I did over the last 6 hours or something, that all these 50 files that were touched were indeed needed to be touched or not?
First and foremost, that's weird that you're touching 50 files with one user story, but it might happen, right? So you have to limit as well what you're touching, right? That's good coding practice. right? To limit the scope of what you're touching. You create the unit test out of it or the BDD test out of it and do a PR, right? So touching 50 files probably is just too much, right? For the reviewer as well, right? So probably keeping it small. Like I just want to modify this module or function, right? And do a PR for that one or generate a test for that one rather than working on a lot of stuff and then trying to do one big PR.
And it's gonna happen a lot for test kit tests because the moment you touch something in a framework, it's gonna impact a lot of test files. So
For sure, for sure. So you that's why you have the review, right? I know it's a tedious process. I hear my BAs and you, right? I don't have to review all of this stuff. I did not generate this, right? But that's keeping the human in the loop, right? So if you just let it go in your code base without you actually touching and seeing it, it works, yes. Then that's probably irresponsible of you, right? Not actually reviewing the output. I'm not saying it's you, right? It's just a responsible process, right? Or practice. Yeah.
sure, thanks.
Come to you, and then you still have a question in the back?
Yeah.
We'll come to you in a minute if yours is a separate question. from This thread that we're on right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Good.
You mentioned in one of your responses, first, let me say, thank you. I really appreciate the practical application and the examples and not just the ideas. So thank you very much because that's a lot of work to go through, like how do you actually make this happen in the real world? So thank you for that. You mentioned a phrase, you said that I'm intrigued by, transforming testers into quality engineers. That resonates with me, but I also think it is, has a strong possibility that when the words might not be the same thing to you or to me. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that phrase specifically? Who are the testers and what does it mean for them to turn into quality engineers?
Transforming. Oh, this is a totally different talk and topic, right? But the way we are transforming testers to quality engineers is that we don't start from scratch, right? Testers need to know testing before they can be quality engineer. At least that's how we are practicing it, right? So we work with them so that they get to know how to write automation, how to look at metrics, and how to work with developers. That's the main point that we are working on for transforming testers into quality engineers. Because most of the time, testers are in a siloed group, right? They don't talk to the developers unless they log a bug, right? So that's unfortunately that's how things are going, at least for some of the teams that we have in the company. So what we see as the remedy to it is for them to know a bit of automation, know how to tell stories through metrics, and then work with developers with their teams in collaboration.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, now to you, corner.
Yeah, so the question is around your model. I mean. The examples you gave are really generic, right? And I think they're meant to be that way. How do you get to that next step to make it specific for your own application,
Yeah.
your own data?
Yeah, so we do working sessions with the team, right? Getting their own actual user story, getting their own code base, right? The reason why it's generic is so that everyone, gets to, understand what we are talking about. But when it comes to us working with the teams, we actually use the work that they have so that we can customize or generate artifacts that are specific to them. So it's not like we train them and that's it, right? We do working sessions with them so that they can customize their prompts the way they use the process.
And develop your own AI model as well, or you use
No.
your own data for your development of your AI model.
No, we are not that far yet. Yeah.
And
Yeah, but just to that point, so you guys are not using any type of RAG or any specific model that was trained on your company data. You just have your own ChatGPT to make it safe to use, but it's not.
It does learn, but we can never really track if it's actually learning what we are feeding it to, right? As mentioned earlier,
But
it's
is
not
there,
repeatable, it's not
I'll
100%.
rephrase, is there some sort of specific system prompt that you have so that, or do they prompt from scratch? Do they have to like go in from zero with every user story?
The chat GPT that we have for the company, it always starts from scratch. Yeah. You can feed context at the moment, but it doesn't really remember.
You can feed in context to that prior to the your prompt, right?
Yeah. But then again, it's hard to trace whether that context got included to the knowledge base, right?
Any,
One of my problems every time I brave Copilot chat to try and generate BGD steps for me is it doesn't know about my library, and I'm very reluctant to grow our BGD step library with a bunch of like very specific one-off steps and a bunch of code that will be there once, and then the next time we go generate a test case, and we're doing a similar thing, we now have an identical function thrown in. How do you feel about the maintainability of like all of the test code that's being generated?
Yeah, with any tests that we do, there's always maintenance, right? So we can really do away with maintenance. I know there's just another AI tool that they are creating right now to facilitate what are the duplicates, weed out the duplicates. That goes for code as well as for the manual tests that we are producing, right? Our team created a tool that says, hey, you already have this test case already existing, why are you creating another one? It tells you it's 100% match, 90% match, again, using AI. But again, different talk. Yeah, but maintenance will always be there, right? Regardless whether you do it manually or with AI. It's just that if you are now generating more, right, then there's a lot to maintain. Yeah.
any of them, same thread?
Yeah, great question. So when especially if we look at automated tests, there's three primary things we're generally looking for efficiency is. One is creating them, the second is maintaining them, and then the third is being able to understand them. AI helps very well with the create and the understand. It's that maintainability, and I think we're kind of at a state where, including the products test tools that my employer creates and then my teams are doing, where we're very much on helping people create. But it's like we've almost forgotten the lessons learned 25 years ago about record and playback and let's build maintainable tests. But I will tell you, there are a lot of us that are thinking about this and experimenting of how do we solve this so that we recognize you already have some reusable test steps, whatever your tool is. Let's have this new thing we built, use that. Or let's recognize this story iterates on whatever came before, and we're building on that rather than start everything from scratch. But most of the implementations I'm seeing, whether it's from a tool vendor or someone copy pasting into ChatGPT, is focused on, I want to create something, I want to understand. But I'm hopeful that we will come up with methods to deal with the maintainability piece.
I actually like the talk earlier about model-based testing, wherein you generate, and if you don't need it anymore, you throw it away and you generate again.
Yeah.
Right? Might be a good use case.
And maybe if the AI gets good enough at generating, we don't care. We can just, regenerate each time.
Yeah.
But
True.
I don't know that we're there yet.
Same thing.
I'm gonna ask a question, talk about the idea of maintainability. We developed our own automation technology for a number of years. Maintainability is crucial in it. If you think about the development role, and I come from a development background, if your application is not maintainable, you are not going to have an application for very long that does what it's supposed to do over time. And tests are the same thing, and in fact, even more so. Because if you try to automate a test and it starts to fail, you tend to throw them away and create a new test, which is what you're going to be doing if you're going to be generating tests all the time. Instead, I'm going to go to the way we approach it. Why don't you use AI? And we're actually using AI to help and supplement, not to do the testing, to help you create your test framework. And then you can maintain the framework, which is going to be a solid base that you don't just create something new around it. And then what you can do is you can add or extend tests through AI to maintain it.
Mhm.
So you maintain the framework, you don't maintain the testing per se. And that's the approach we've taken, and it is incredible.
Mhm.
So we started with maintainability as the forefront, didn't do anything with AI until about the last year. And now we're extending it to support the tooling rather than to do the testing per se.
Yeah.
And then I was going to ask you also about Copilot. I've tried Copilot and I don't like it.
Okay.
We've used Claude very incredibly well. And look at the Claude MCP, because one of the things that we did, somebody talked about looking to their own tooling and your own documentation. We spent a lot of time working on documentation. And then what we do is we use Claude MCP to point to our documentation and then use Cloud MCP to point to our own test code internally. So it all stays internalized when you use the MCP, and the results are amazing. So that gives you the starting point with full context of what your application is doing and what your framework is doing and what your tests are doing. And you put that all into context through the MCP models. So it's just something that we've done that found very effective. Have you looked at the MCP processes? Look at it.
Okay.
It is very, very intriguing.
Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have time for probably like one more.
I was just gonna second that, when it comes to these either generating code, generating tests, these kind of tests, Claude Sonnet does much better than I've seen from any of the OpenAI models.
Yeah,
I've not done enough experimentation with GPT-5 yet to know, but on the surface, I still think, Claude 3.7 is gonna be better than GPT-5. If you're doing things like just comparing like text and analysis, like the OpenAI, even the mini models work very well at that. But if you're generating tests, generating code, generating test ideas, that sort of thing, in my experience, Claude seems to work much better than the other.
I don't know why, but it's amazing. We've tried a lot of them. in
Well, part of it's reasoning, which now the newer OpenAI models have. But even some of that, if I turn reasoning on or off or turn the thinking budget way down, it still does better than it.
So thank you, everyone. If you want to say hi on LinkedIn, say hi in person, right? I might still have a bit of a social battery right now. So say hi. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.